Hello everybody, Trano here, and today we are going to take a look at the Tanks of the Sons of Attila update, which has now been released for War Thunder. Now we're going to start off left to right. There will be timestamps in the description below if you want to look at an individual tank, but we're going to start off with the Americans and we're going to go left to right. And for the start we've got the improved Chaparral, which is an American SPAA vehicle, and that is coming in between the M247 and LAV AD. At rank 6, battle rating 9.3. Now as you can see, this is extremely unarmoured. Most of the crew are extremely exposed, with only the gunner actually being in any sort of protective area, and even that's not particularly great. It's got a top speed of 30 miles per hour on a 128 horsepower engine, and you've got 4 gears forward and 1 gear backwards, with a top speed in reverse of 10 miles per hour. And this comes with the MIM-72A and MIM-72C missiles. So the A variant is a rear aspect targeting missile with a launch range of 6 kilometers and a lock range of 5.5 kilometers. The C is an all aspect targeting rocket with a lock range in rear aspect of 12 kilometers and a lock range in all aspect of 3.6 kilometers. And again, a launch range of 6 kilometers. And the gunner gets access to thermal vision and the driver has access to night vision devices. And the gunner optics are Track IRST, it's got a range of 10 kilometers, it's got BVR mode, ACM mode and a zoom of 6 times. Unfortunately, something else you'll probably notice about the Chaparral is that it doesn't have access to a radar, which does somewhat limit the effectiveness of this vehicle. Now moving on to the Germans, we've got the Leopard 2 PSO, which is now the top tier vehicle in the medium tank lineup, coming after the Leopard 2 A5 and A6, though it does stay at the same battle rating as those two vehicles, 11.7. Now this does come with some additional armour. For example, you can see on the sides here we've got these composite screens, and we've got the composite armour at the front here and around the frontal turret as well. It's got a new engine, a 1,442 horsepower engine, and it's got 10 gears forward for a top speed of 42 miles per hour forwards and 6 gears backwards for a top reverse speed of 20.3 miles per hour. It's got the same top speed as the Leopard 2 A6 despite weighing 7.1 tons more, and it's armed with the 120mm RH-120 length 44 cannon, which has a vertical targeting speed of 22 degrees and a horizontal targeting speed of 24 degrees. And the gunner has a optics with zoom times 4 and times 12, and the commander has optics with zoom times 2 to times 8. And it has a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun and a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof. And it also has the standard crew as the other Leopard. So you've got your loader, gunner, commander, who can also fire the main armament, and the driver within the hull. And if we look at the modifications, of course it has the laser rangefinder. The gunner and tank commander both have access to thermal vision and the driver night vision. It can be equipped with a dozer blade, which could also provide a little bit of extra protection from the front. It can also use smoke grenades, and it seems to have the standard ammunition type. So you've got your DM12A1 Heat FS shell with 480mm penetration, the DM11 high explosive timed fuse shell with 37mm penetration, the DM33 with 470mm penetration at 500 meters, and the top tier DM53 APFS DS round with 610mm penetration at 500 meters. Then moving on to the USSR, we've got the TO-55 flamethrower tank and the 2S1 Gvozdyka. We'll look at the TO-55 first, which is a premium tank coming in at battle rating 8.0, rank 5. And of course the main difference between this and the regular T-55 is the addition of a coaxial flamethrower. And it also has this rather large ammunition tank, which holds the fuel required for the flamethrower. It also seems to be missing the APCR rounds, that's on the T-54 1947, but we've still got the BR4 12D APC-BC round with 220mm penetration, HE shell with 27mm penetration, a smoke shell, the 3BM8 Sabo round with 317mm penetration at 500 meters, and the 3BK5 Heat FS shell with 380mm penetration. The driver, commander and gunner have access to night vision devices, and you can see here this is what the ammunition is technically called on the TO-55, it's just called Incendiary Mixer. It has the, not smoke grenades, but it has the smoke generating system that comes from the exhaust of the engine. It has a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof, and the main gun has a targeting speed in horizontal of 8.9 degrees a second, vertical of 2.5 degrees a second, and a 2-plane gun stabilizer. And also your standard crew, gunner, commander, and loader in the turret, and the driver in the hull. If we move on to the 2S1 Gvozdika, that comes between the ISU 122S and 2S3M at rank 4, and it's going to be a battle rating 8.0 vehicle. As you can see, very lightly armoured, not really much good for protecting against more than light machine gun fire. Even heavy machine gun fire will go through this. It's got a top speed of 37 miles per hour on a 265 horsepower engine. It's got 11 gears forward and 2 gears in reverse, with a reverse top speed of 6.4 miles per hour. And you can see we've got some internal armour, RHA, only 5mm thick though, so again, not particularly great, but it does help a little bit against shrapnel and the like. And you can see here we've got the main weapon, which is a 122mm 2A31 cannon. It's got a horizontal targeting speed of 5.9 degrees a second and a vertical targeting speed of 3.1 seconds. And it can fire 4 shells, a HE shell with 51mm penetration, Heat FS shell with 400mm penetration, a HEVT shell with 51mm penetration, and a technically improved HE shell with 51mm penetration. As I said on the dev server, this one weighs less than the standard HE shell, so I suspect this is better for longer ranged attacks. Maybe there's less drop on it, but I would need to test that in battle to confirm. And as you can see, we've got 4 crew, driver at the front here, and then the gunner, commander, and loader at the back here in the turret. And the gunner has an optics of 3.7 to 5.5 zoom, and the commander has a zoom of 5.0. So this will be a pretty good artillery vehicle, and a good intermediate stage between the ISU 122S and the 2S3M, which has the larger 152mm gun. Moving on to Britain, of course, we only got the one vehicle, which is technically a Russian T-90 Bhishma, as used by the Indian Army, and that is a squadron vehicle at 10.3 in rank 7. As you can see, it's missing some of the protection systems that are present on the other T-90s, so we've got more ERA armour around here. It's got this dozer blade at the front, which of course provides a little bit of extra protection. It has a laser rangefinder and can be equipped with smoke grenades and the smoke generating system from the engine exhaust. And the gunner has access to thermal vision, while the tank commander and driver have access to night vision. And it comes with 4 shells. We got the Heat FS shell with 550mm penetration, high explosive time fused shell with 42mm penetration, the 3BM42 APFS DS round with 445mm penetration, and a anti-tank guided missile with a tandem warhead capable of penetrating 850mm of armour. And that is guided by beam riding. It's got a launch range of 5 kilometers and a missile guidance time of 28 seconds. And as you can see here, it's got an 884 horsepower engine, which gives us a top speed when going forward of 37 miles per hour on 7 gears. Unfortunately, it has a very slow reverse speed of only 2.6 miles per hour. So extremely slow for getting out of ambush situations, shoot and scoot situations, etc, etc. And as you can see here, we've got a lot of composite armour at the front here. And we've got the driver who is behind all that in the hull position. And then in the turret, we've got the gunner and commander, who can also fire the main armament. And this has a targeting speed in the horizontal of 14 degrees a second, vertical of 2 degrees a second, and a 2-plane gun stabilizer. And the gunner has optics of 2.7 to 12.0 zoom, and the commander has a zoom of 1.0 to 8.0. And you can also see we've got some more explosive reactive armour on the sides here, and some rubber screens, though I don't think the rubber screens are going to be all that helpful, to be honest. Moving on to Japan, there's only the one extra vehicle, the TKXP, which is basically a prototype version of the TKX or Type 10, and it's going to be coming in at battle rating 11.0. And of course, one of the big differences is that it doesn't have access to the very best APFS DS round, which has about 604mm penetration at 500 meters. This only has access to the JM33 APFS DS round with 470 millimeters penetration at 500 meters. And it also has a Heat FS shell with 480 millimeters penetration. It can also be equipped with a dozer blade, which will help with entrenching and provide a little bit extra protection. It has a laser warning system and a laser rangefinder, and the gunner and commander both have access to thermal vision, while the driver has access to night vision. It also has a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun and a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof. And while the frontal armour doesn't look all that good, remember there is composite armour behind that. So 50mm RHA, then 440mm composite, and then another 120mm RHA for the whole front. While the turret cheeks have 20mm RHA up to 565mm composite, and then a further 70mm. While the mantlet has 40mm RHA and then 145mm composite. And again, the side armour is pretty bad, only 35mm, and the rear is only about 25mm. And it's got a top speed of 44 miles per hour on a 1061 horsepower engine, and it's got 8 gears forward and 8 gears backwards, so that top speed is with regards to forward and reverse speed. And then the commander has 4 times zoom to 13.3, while the gunner has 4 times zoom to 13.3. And it's got a horizontal targeting speed of 18 degrees a second, a vertical targeting speed of 5.6 degrees a second, and a 2-plane gun stabilizer. And it has an autoloader, meaning there's only 2 crew in the turret, the commander and the gunner, while the driver is down here in the hole. Then moving on to China, we've got the M41A3 and the MBT-2000. We'll look at the M41A3 first, which seems very similar to the M41A1, but it does have access to less ammunition, so it doesn't get the Sabo round. It only gets the M339 APBC round, which gives 159mm penetration at 500 meters, a HE shell with a maximum penetration of 15mm, and a smoke shell, as well as the coaxial 7.62mm machine gun and roof-mounted 12.7mm machine gun. Armour, as to be expected, is extremely light, maxing out at about 31mm, with most of it being less than that. And it's got a top speed of 45 miles per hour forward on a 442 horsepower engine. It's got 4 gears forward, 2 gears backwards with a top speed in reverse of 11.7 miles per hour. And it has a crew of 4, a driver, gunner, commander, and loader. And as for the gun, it's got a targeting speed in horizontal 14 degrees a second and a targeting speed in the vertical of 2.2 degrees a second, while the gunner has a zoom of 8.0. And considering this is a battle rating 5.0 vehicle, that's a good amount of zoom for that battle rating, which will make this quite good at long range shooting, although, like I said in my video on the dev server, doesn't necessarily have the best ammunition for long range shooting, but I think it will do decently enough. Then moving on, we've got the MBT-2000, which comes in at battle rating 10.0 at rank 7 between the CM11 and WZ-1001E LCT, and that's on the light tank lineup. So as you can see here, armour doesn't look exactly the best, but of course a lot of that is ERA. So we've got the ERA armour around here, and we've got composite armour for the lower hull, though there is a gap here, which can be exploited. You could easily knock out the driver there. We've also got more composite armour and DRA armour around the whole front, around the turret cheeks, while the mantlet has cast homogeneous armour. And we've also got these slats around the side here, more rubber fabric screens, but only a thickness of 60mm for the sides of the hull and about 50mm or so for the turret sides, while the rear maxes out at about 45mm, while the turret maxes out at about 30 to 20mm. And looking at the gun first, we've got a 125mm gun capable of firing Heat FS shells with a 480mm penetration, HE shell with 45mm penetration, 125i APFS DS round with 458mm penetration at 500 meters, and a HEVT shell with 43mm penetration. And it also comes with a laser rangefinder, can also be fitted with a dozer blade, smoke grenade launcher, and the smoke generating system from the engine exhaust. And the gunner has access to thermal vision, while the commander and driver have access to night vision devices. Also has a 7.62mm machine gun and 12.7mm machine gun. And the commander has access to 6 times zoom, while the gunner has access to 3 times to 10 times zoom. And it's got a top speed of 43 miles per hour on a 1061 horsepower engine. It's got 7 gears forward, but only 4 gears backwards for a top reverse speed of 19.4 miles per hour. Moving on from China, we come to my favourite bit of the new update, and that is the Hungarian subtree, which starts off at battle rating 1.3 with the 39M Charber. Extremely lightly armoured because it is a very low tier armoured car, but it does have some sloping which helps to maximise that armour. Unfortunately, it only comes with a 20mm anti-tank rifle with a penetration of 25mm at 500 meters and a slow rate of fire of only 60 rounds a minute, and you have to reload every 5 rounds because it has a box magazine. And it does come with an 8mm coaxial machine gun for against unarmoured targets. And thankfully the reload speed is only 3.9 seconds, so at least you can reload decently fast. And it's got a horizontal targeting of 14 degrees on the horizontal and 8.4 degrees on the vertical. And it's got a top speed of 40 miles per hour in forwards and reverse on 5 gears. And that's with an 84 horsepower engine. So this is a pretty decently fast vehicle, good for ambush situations and shoot and scoot situations. And it's got a crew of 4, which is a driver at the front of the hull, machine gunner and gunner in the turret, and a commander at the rear of the vehicle. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem they are able to take command of the driving duties, which would be quite handy, but of course 1 extra crewman is always helpful. Moving on, we then come to rank 2, which starts with the Turan 1 at battle rating 2.3. And this has a maximum armour thickness on the front of 50mm, a few weak spots like here, which is only 25mm. Got a combined plate here at the lower whole front, so 15mm plus 35. Here's only 13, but you've got a lot of sloping to maximise the amount of protection you get. Only have 25mm for the hull and turret sides, and then 25 for the hull and turret rear. So you do also have these armour slats for against heat FS shells and the like. This bit around the commander's cupola is going to be a bit of a weak spot. That's only 25mm, so if a shell gets there and explodes, that's going to send fragments straight into the turret, which is not exactly great. And the main armament is the 40mm Mavag 41M 40/51, which is capable of firing an AP-HE-BC shell with 52mm penetration at 500 meters, a HE shell with a maximum penetration of 9mm, and an AP-BC shell with 61mm penetration at 500 meters. So 9mm more penetration, but you don't get that explosive filler. So it's going to kind of depend on whether you want to maximise your post-penetration damage or just maximise the amount of armour you want to penetrate. And it can be fitted with smoke grenades, and of course there is a coaxial 8mm machine gun. And it's got a horizontal targeting speed of 8.9 degrees a second and a vertical targeting speed of 2.2 degrees a second. And it's got a top speed forward and backwards of 26.7 miles per hour on 6 gears, and that's on a 230 horsepower engine. And as for the crew, we've got a machine gunner and driver at the front of the hull, and your gunner, commander and loader in the turret itself. And then moving on, we've got the Serini tank destroyer, which is coming in at battle rating 2.7. And this is basically a counterpart of the Serini 1, which has a 75mm gun. This comes with a 105mm Mavag 40/43M howitzer. That has a HE shell with 27mm penetration and a heat shell with 120mm penetration. So pretty effective once you've unlocked that heat shell. And it has a maximum armour at the front of 75mm, though the mantlet could be a bit of a weak spot as only 50mm of armour are there. And there is this weak spot here by the driver's port, which is also only 50mm. The lower hull front is 75mm, and that's from 2 combined plates, while the side armour is 25mm, though there are some weak spots which are only 13mm, but are extremely well angled, so you're not really going to penetrate there very easily. And the rear maxes out at about 25mm. So again, the rear of the main superstructure is only 21mm, effective thickness even with sloping. And you do have these structural steel armour plates for against heat shells. And like with the other Hungarian vehicles, this can reach its top speed of 24.9 miles per hour forwards and backwards on 6 gears. That's on a 230 horsepower engine. And the Gunner has an optics of 5 times zoom. And it has a crew of 4, which is a driver and loader on the right side of the vehicle, and a gunner and commander on the left side of the vehicle. Which could be an issue if you're penetrated, because even a solid shot shell will probably take out at least 2 of the crew, and an explosive shell might easily take out the entire vehicle, just because they're so close together. And then moving on, we come to the Turan 3, which is coming in at battle rating 3.7. And this is the vehicle I'm kind of most looking forward to, so probably the one I'm going to be going for the most. And this has a maximum armour of 75mm, again some weak spots around the driver's ports, and possibly the bow machine gun, and the turret machine gun, and even the mantlet might be a little bit of a weak spot. And of course it does stick out rather obviously because of this exposed commander's mantlet. Although it is well armoured, you've got a effective thickness of 95mm or so for this bit of the armour, and the actual commander's cupola itself is about 50mm, and luckily the commander is quite a bit down from that cupola, so less chance of being taken out by solid shots. Unfortunately, the lower hull front is a bit of a weakness. It's only 50mm, which some people tell me is a bit of an inaccuracy, so potentially that needs looking at. And then the sides are only 25mm for the hull and about 35 for the turret, while the rear is maxing out at 35mm for the hull and the 25mm for the turret. And the main gun is capable of firing 3 shells, an APC-BC shell with 130mm penetration at 500 meters, but with explosive filler, a HE shell with 10mm penetration, and a heat shell with 80mm penetration. So it looks like you get your best shell available from the very start, which is very good. And it has a horizontal targeting speed of 8.9 degrees a second and a vertical targeting speed of 2.2 degrees a second. And the gunner has an optics of 1.9 to 3.5 times zoom. And again, can reach its same top speed in reverse and forward, which is 26.7 miles per hour on 6 gears forward and reverse. Comes with a 230 horsepower engine and again has 5 crew, a machine gunner and driver in the hull, and the gunner, commander and loader in the turret. Also has an 8mm coaxial machine gun. And then moving on from the Turan, unfortunately we get a bunch of what appear to be copy-paste vehicles. So the 2S1 Gvozdika is back, seems to fire about the same shells, has the same armour, same crew complement, so basically the same as the Russian 2S1. We've also got the BTR-80A, that's coming in at battle rating 7.3, 3 crew, driver, commander and gunner, 30mm automatic cannon, which is capable of doing 79mm penetration with its very best APDS round, has access to night vision devices for the gunner, commander and driver, smoke grenades are available as well, and it has a top speed of 54 miles per hour forward and 7.3 miles per hour in reverse. So 5 gears forward, 1 gear reverse. That's on a 230 horsepower engine and a horizontal targeting speed of 18 degrees a second and a vertical targeting speed of 7.8 degrees a second, and has access to a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun. Then we get to the T-72M1, which is at battle rating 9.3. Again, this seems broadly the same as the regular T-72M1, so you've got your composite armour at the front here, 110mm RHA and 100mm Textilite. The mantlet is cast homogeneous armour, and then we've got more CHA armour and quartz core for the composite armour around the turret. Has a crew of 3, so commander and gunner in the turret and a driver in the hull. Has access to a Heat FS shell with 440mm penetration, HE shell 42mm penetration, 3BM9 APFS DS round with 303mm penetration at 500 meters, the 3BM15 with 420mm penetration at 500 meters, and the 3BM22 with 415mm penetration at 500 meters. And it has access to a laser rangefinder, smoke grenades, smoke generating system, a dozer blade, night vision devices for the commander, gunner and driver, a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun and roof mounted 12.7mm machine gun, and a top speed of 37 miles per hour when going forward on 7 gears, but only 2.6 miles per hour in reverse on 1 gear. And that's from a 690 horsepower diesel engine. We then get the Leopard 2 A4 at 10.3. Again, seems broadly the same as the regular Leopard 2 A4, so composite armour for the whole front, the whole cheeks, the mantlet, and the sides of the turret. Only 35mm thickness for the side of the turret and the hull, which reduces to about 20mm towards the rear of the hull and 15 around the rear of the side of the turret. And then the actual hull and turret rears are about 20 to 25mm. And it's capable of firing the TM12 Heat FS shell with 480mm penetration, TM13 shell with 384mm penetration at 500 meters, and the APFS DS DM23 with 401mm penetration at 500 meters. Also has access to thermal for the gunner and night vision for the tank commander and driver, can have a dozer blade fitted, and has a laser rangefinder, as well as a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun. And it has a horizontal targeting speed of 24 degrees a second, 22 degrees for the vertical, and a 2-plane gun stabilizer. And a crew of 4, so a loader, commander, and gunner in the turret, with the commander also being able to fire the main armament, and a driver at the front of the hull. And it has a top speed of 42 miles per hour on 8 gears forward, 19.2 miles per hour 4 gears reverse, and that's on a 1,327 horsepower diesel engine. And then lastly, on the Hungarian subtree, we have the KF-41. So relatively lightly armoured, only about 20mm rolled homogeneous armour for the whole front, although there is some active protection systems. So around here, it's got a reaction time of 0.56 milliseconds, and it's got 2 pieces of countermeasures available. We've got some more active protection around the side of the vehicle and a little bit at the rear of the vehicle. So the actual armour itself is, again, only maxing out around 20mm, so not particularly great against kinetic rounds or other rounds once the active protection has run out. And it's armed primarily with the 30mm gun, which can fire a default APDS round with 81mm penetration at 500 meters, a high explosive incendiary tracer shell with a maximum penetration of 9mm, and a head shrapnel shell with time fuse with 36mm penetration at 500 meters, or an APFS DS round with 111mm penetration at 500 meters. It can also fire the Spike LR2 missiles, which is the anti-tank guided missiles with tandem warhead, and that has a lock range of 20 kilometers, an IR guidance system, and a missile guidance time of 35 seconds. And that has 700mm of penetration. And it also has a 12.62mm machine gun on the roof and a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun. And it can deploy a scout UAV, has access to thermal vision for the gunner and commander, while the driver has access to night vision, can be equipped with smoke grenades, and has a laser warning system and laser rangefinder. And there's some more internal armour inside, only about 5mm or so. And then you've got the driver in the whole front and the gunner and commander in the turret. And the commander can also fire the main armament. And the gunner has optics of 4.4 to 16.7 zoom, while the commander has access to 4.4 to 16.7. So this looks to be a very good end to the Hungarian subtree. There is also the ZSU 57-2, which basically seems the same as the regular ZSU 57-2. So 2 57mm guns, which with its best ammunition can penetrate 132mm of armour, and also has access to HE shells, another APBC shell with 132mm penetration, but without explosive filler, and your default APBC and HE shell loadout, and has a crew of 6. So 3 loaders, a gunner and commander in the turret area, and your driver at the front here. And we've also got the ZSU for 23-4 at 8.0. Again, much like the Soviet one, 4 crew, commander, gunner, and loader in the turret, driver at the front. 4 23mm guns, very lightly armoured, has a tracking radar with a range of 20 kilometers, a look down road, BVR mode and ACM mode, and a top speed of 31 miles per hour forward on 5 gears, 1 gear backwards for 4.7 miles per hour at reverse speed, and a 248 horsepower engine. Now moving on to France, we have two vehicles, the AMX-10M and the Leclerc Azur. We'll start with the AMX-10M first, which comes between the AU-F1 and AMX-50 Foch at 7.3. Very lightly armoured, with the maximum armour being about 25mm with some structural steel on top of that. And it's only aluminium armour, so this is basically not particularly well protected against anything except for light machine gun fire. And again, same for the sides, only 20mm, and the rear 20mm. And even the roof is only about 15mm, so aerial vehicles are going to chew this up pretty damn quickly. And this uses a 142mm ACRA gun launcher. That's capable of firing an anti-tank guided missile with 700mm penetration. It's got beam riding guidance, launch range of 3.8km, and a missile guidance time of 9.5 seconds. And it can also fire an HE fragmentation shell with 36mm penetration. And it does also have a 20mm 20F2 autocannon on the roof here for protection against unarmoured vehicles. And it's got 4 crew, a gunner and driver at the front of the hull, loader towards the middle, and the commander who fires the autocannon at the rear here. And it's got a top speed of 37 miles per hour forward on 8 gears, with only 2 gears backwards for a top reverse speed of 6.8 miles per hour. And it's got a 248 horsepower engine. So a very powerful vehicle, but of course it can only really fire forwards because it is in a casemate, which does somewhat limit its effectiveness. As some people pointed out in the video I did on the dev server, I did somewhat understate the casemate element, and I just kind of focused on the anti-tank guided missile, but like I say, it is somewhat limited because of this casemate nature. And then of course the other vehicle we got is the Leclerc Azur, which is coming at the end of the medium tank lineup at battle rating 11.7. And one of the big changes is the additional armour around the side of the vehicle. So we've got ERA armour around the front of the hull side, and we've got slat armour for the rear of the vehicle and rear of the turret. And we've also got composite armour around the sides of the turret, though the rear turret bits are only 250mm composite armour plus RHA, while the front is 500 to 550mm composite with 90mm RHA, while the mantlet is only about 30 to 45mm RHA, which could be a bit of a weak spot, though there is some high hardness rolled armour on top of that by the looks of it, which does provide a little bit extra protection. And of course there is the ERA for the whole front as well, so 65mm RHA and 500mm composite armour. And this is capable of firing 3 shells, the stock Heat FS shell with 480mm penetration, an OFL 120GL G1 APFS DS round with 417mm penetration at 500 metres, and the 120F1 APFS DS round with 565mm penetration at 500 metres. It can also be equipped with smoke grenade, a laser rangefinder, and it has access to thermal vision for the gunner and night vision for the commander and driver, as well as a 7.62mm machine gun on the roof and a 12.7mm machine gun in the coaxial position. And it has a crew of 3, so you've got your driver at the front here in the hull, and your commander who can fire the main armament, and gunner in the turret. And it's got a horizontal targeting speed of 18 degrees a second, and a vertical targeting speed of 20 degrees a second on a 2-plane gun stabilizer. And the gunner has access to optics of 3.3 to 10 times zoom, while the commander has access to 2.5 to 10 times zoom. And it has a top speed of 44 miles per hour when going forward on 10 gears, and 4 gears reverse for a top reverse speed of 23.3 miles per hour in reverse, and that is on a 1327 horsepower diesel engine. Moving on to the Swedes, we've again got 2 vehicles, the PVKV-4 and the Vidar artillery vehicle, which is a pack vehicle. We start off with the PVKV-4. It's got a top speed going forwards of 28 miles per hour and 4 miles per hour in reverse, 4 gears forward, 1 gear in reverse. Relatively lightly armoured compared to some other vehicles, but it does have sloping to help maximise that. So we've got 13mm for the hull front, though the rear of the hull has 35mm protection, with the front of the hull having only 13mm, but it is sloped. while the turret front seems to max out at about 20mm. The whole side's about 13mm, and same for the turret sides. And then the hull and turret rear maxes out at about 13mm. And it's armed with a 57mm gun, capable of firing an AP shell with 81mm penetration at 500 meters, HE shell with 8mm penetration, AP HEBC shell with 78mm penetration at 500 meters, and an APDS round with 158mm penetration at 1000 meters, which is pretty good for a 3.7 vehicle. It also has access to a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun. It has a horizontal targeting speed of 2.7 degrees a second and vertical targeting speed of 2.2 degrees a second, and the gunner has optics of 1.9 to 3.5 times zoom. And of course there are 3 crew, which is a driver in the hull front and the gunner and loader in the turret. And we then come to the VDAR, which is coming in at battle rating 7.7, rank 5. And that has a very powerful 155mm artillery weapon, with its stock M107 HE shell having a penetration of 54mm penetration, an M110 smoke shell, the M107 PF HEVT shell with 61mm penetration, and an improved HE shell with 61mm penetration. This has access to a laser rangefinder and a thermal vision device for the gunner and night vision for the driver. And of course, armour is ridiculously light, only maxing it out at around 35mm in some areas. So only really good for against light machine gun fire and maybe heavy machine gun fire. And the rear ammo storage is extremely vulnerable because it's only got 35mm high hardness armour. Although the roof is quite well protected against machine gun fire on the top, which is pretty good. 35mm in most areas, 20mm in some others. And it has a top speed forward of 42 miles per hour on 8 gears and 4 gears for a reverse top speed of 23.8 miles per hour. And that's on a 884 horsepower engine. And it has a crew of 5. So you've got your driver here at the hull front, and your gunner, 2 loaders, and your commander in the turret. And the gunner has access to an optics of 8.8 to 10.0 zoom. And it's got a targeting speed in the horizontal of 5.9 degrees a second and 5.6 degrees a second for the vertical. And lastly, we come to Israel, which only got the one vehicle, which is also an improved Chaparral. And this is a whole battle rating higher than the American one. This is 10.3. The American one was 9.3. And the reason for that is to do with the ammunition. So it's got basically the same ammunition and other stats, but it also has access to the E and G missiles. The American one only had access to the A and C. So the E has all aspects targeting IR guidance, and the lock range for rear aspect is 12 kilometers, 3.6 for all aspects, and it's got a launch range of 6 kilometers. And the G is again all aspects, but it also comes with electronic countermeasures. So it should be a bit better at targeting more modern aircraft with more modern countermeasures. And the lock range in all aspects is 6 kilometers, rear aspect is 11 kilometers, and it's got a launch range of 6 kilometers. And the gunner has access to thermal vision and the driver night vision. And like with the American one, it doesn't seem to have access to a radar, which obviously does somewhat limit its effectiveness. And the gunner optics is it has access to track IRST, a range of 10 kilometers, BVR mode, ACM mode, and a zoom of 6 times. So that is literally all of the armoured vehicles that are being brought in the Sons of Attila update. And the ones that I'm most excited to unlock are the Hungarian vehicles. Like I say, the Turan 3 is the one I'm definitely going to be going for first. It's a bit of a shame some of the other nations didn't get much, because of course Britain only got a Russian squadron vehicle. Japan only got the one vehicle which is quite similar to vehicles already in the game. But of course, the French and Germans did get some very good top tier vehicles. China got some pretty decent vehicles in this update, I think. As did Sweden. Russia didn't get anything groundbreaking, but it got some decent additions in the TO-55 and 2S1 Gvozdyka. And we were told that Britain will be getting some new light tanks at some point in the future, so I'm hoping in maybe the next update or so, we'll start seeing some Cold War British light tanks being added to War Thunder. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a very long one. I've been Tyranno, and I'll see you next time.